Fellow Americans, my name is Angelica Ross. I'm an actress, activist, entrepreneur, and proud Black trans woman. It is my honor to join you today. While President Biden prepares his speech to the nation, I'm here with Logo to address another historic year for America's LGBTQ+ community. We'll run through the highs and the lows and everything in between as we stand tall and do what our community has always done: press forward. Now, those who know me know that I keep it all the way 100, so here's a reality check. We, the people, are in control. Our elected officials work for us, not the other way around. So please, stop emailing me asking me for more donations. I'm calling on each and every one of you to join me in holding our communities, our local representatives, and our nation's leaders accountable during this very critical inflection point in American history. We are all living through a moment of unprecedented loss, financial hardship, and socio-political discord. We know these issues disproportionately impact the most marginalized among us. So we need our leaders to be doing more to protect our LGBTQ+ community, but most particularly our Black trans sisters and siblings. It's time we have an honest and intersectional conversation centering the most vulnerable among us. And if anyone from the Biden-Harris administration is tuning in, I'm always open to discussing any of this further. Drop me a line, honey. You got my number. Like the previous 2 years before it, 2021 was defined in large part by the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. But the past year did see some major medical advances in the fight against COVID-19. Vaccines became widely available last spring, and our community has done an excellent job at prioritizing risk mitigation during the pandemic, save for a few questionable decisions that the internet won't let y'all forget. As of late August, an estimated 92% of LGBTQ Americans had received at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine, compared to 71.3% of the general US population. As queer and trans people, we don't just understand the importance of compassion, responsibility, and community care, we embody these values. With the devastating generational impact of the HIV/AIDS epidemic, we've had to enact them to survive. But girl, we are not out the woods yet. New COVID-19 variants like Delta and Omicron have continued to spread, claiming even more lives and exacerbating existing inequities across our nation's healthcare and economic systems. In 2021, nearly half of all trans Americans struggled to afford food or rent due to this pandemic. Many in our community are not afforded the luxury of paid time off or employer-sponsored healthcare. So we all must continue to look out for each other while urging our elected officials to implement measures that will alleviate such disparities. Another epidemic simultaneously plaguing our nation is the surge of hate-motivated violence against trans Americans, particularly women of color. At least 51 trans people were reported murdered in 2021, making it for the 8th year in a row the deadliest on record for the trans community. The vast majority of these victims were Black trans women. A sobering detail that speaks to the intersectional nature of this epidemic violence. When I say Black Lives Matter, I'm talking about all Black lives. Black trans women, Black disabled folks, Black queer and trans sex workers matter. This ever-mounting tally of trans lives cut too short is devastating, but we cannot let our grief numb us. Anti-trans violence is unacceptable, period. We won't accept it. So the onus is on each and every one of us to change this reality for better through actions small and large. White cis gays, you listening? We need you to educate yourselves and those around you. Fight back against any and all transphobia you encounter in your day-to-day lives. Your privileges grant you power. Use it for good. It comes as no surprise that the previous presidential administration hardly acknowledged this epidemic of transphobic violence. That changed this past November when President Biden and Vice President Harris issued an official proclamation for Transgender Day of Remembrance in November. This tonal shift is long overdue, but I'm not going to stand here and lavish the current administration with praise for doing the bare minimum. President Biden, many of our Black trans sisters and siblings gave you our vote because you told us that you could reach across the political aisle and dance with the devil in the pale moonlight. Amid all these cliched remarks about our country's booming economy, let us not forget that our trans sisters and siblings are experiencing a whole different kind of boom. You say trans youth are brave and claim to have their backs, yet your administration has not done enough to sufficiently protect them. Talk is cheap. We need you to act. Case in point, the LGBTQ Equality Act, which would establish federal non-discrimination protections for all LGBTQ Americans. In 2021, we were so optimistic about its passage into law, yet it's still stalled in the U.S. Senate. This, too, is unacceptable. We urge Congress to move this groundbreaking bill forward, and we implore the Biden administration continue putting pressure on them to do so. You can skip the reactionary Twitter threads, honey. Our community needs proactive protections. As a transgender American, it pains me to note another startling trend of anti-trans animus in our country. In 2021, more than 100 bills infringing upon LGBTQ rights were introduced in 34 states across the nation, making it the worst year on record for anti-LGBTQ legislation. That's more than half the country, y'all. Most of these discriminatory bills took aim at transgender youth, with Republican lawmakers in states like Texas, Alabama, and Florida attempting to bar access to school sports, public spaces like bathrooms or locker rooms, and even gender-affirming healthcare. Adult lawmakers are leveraging the power bestowed on them by American voters to target children. Children. Let that sink in. Young people who will be impacted by these bills aren't even old enough to vote yet. If you're not appalled, you're not paying attention. Thanks to the tireless work of LGBTQ plus activists and legal advocates, many of those anti-trans bills introduced in 2021 were shot down before they could ever become law. But this tide of discriminatory legislation continues today. On February 3rd, the Republican governor of South Dakota signed anti-trans sports ban Senate Bill 46, making it the first transphobic law to pass in 2022. Trans and gender nonconforming young people already experience disproportionately high rates of mental health struggles. In states like Texas, a hot spot for anti-transgender bills in 2021, youth are calling LGBTQ crisis hotlines in record numbers. Trans children and teens need compassion and structural support. Instead, they're watching with bated breath as elected officials around the country work to erode their basic rights. In the face of this onslaught, it would be easy for trans Americans to throw up their hands in defeat. But we are fighters, and we've made our resilience clear. For the second year in a row, thousands of demonstrators took to the streets of New York to protest anti-trans violence and legislation alongside Brooklyn Liberation, a trans-led activist collective. Their cries for justice traveled all the way to Washington, D.C., where the U.S. Department of Education formally extended federal non-discrimination protections to transgender students under Title IX. Media representation has continued to be a powerful tool. In 2021, trans, non-binary, and gender non-conforming creatives made our voices heard. I'm sure you recognize me from my role as the iconic Candy Ferocity on Pose, FX's groundbreaking series about New York's house and ballroom scene. I am enormously proud that our show assembled the largest cast of openly transgender actors to ever regularly appear in a scripted TV series. I love making history as much as the next girl, but more than anything, I'm hoping our success paves the way for a new generation of programming by, about, and for trans people. Believe me when I say Pose was just the beginning. As I conclude, I'd like to take a moment to speak directly to trans, non-binary, and gender non-conforming siblings, particularly the young people out there. I see you. I understand the very unique pain of watching your basic freedoms become pawns in our nation's fractured political system. If it all feels overwhelming at times, you're right, it is. But listen up, my dears, because this is important. You are remarkable. You are powerful. You are unstoppable. No amount of hateful rhetoric will ever change that. Remember, there is a rich history of trans and gender non-conforming people who came before you did. There's a powerful collective surrounding you. Each of us must lift up the banner of liberation together so that the generations that come after us will be even freer. We have always existed, and we will always persevere. As we press forward in 2022, I invite us all to consider the words of pioneering Black transgender activist Marsha P. Johnson. No pride for some of us without liberation for all of us. I see brighter days ahead for LGBTQ Americans, prioritizing our trans and non-binary and gender non-conforming siblings. We're long past the point of equality being the answer. We must focus on equity so that each and every one of us has a chance to access true prosperity. Thank you. May our LGBTQ union remain strong, and may we continue to care for each other.